and viewers, welcome to this session. Today's topic, Perspectives on Gender Budgeting. Myself, Dr. G. Uma, Associate Professor in the School of Gender and Development Studies. In this topic, learning objective is to explain the need for gender budgeting and examine the benefits of gender budgeting. These are the main learning objectives. I will explain the why do we need to do gender budgeting. That is the first thing. Second one is that after learning about the benefits of gender budgeting, then next session we will talk about the steps to be followed in the gender budgeting. Let us learn about the perspectives on gender budgeting. If you know about budget is the main instrument of economic policy at the government disposal. All of us we know that it is the main instrument for any economic policy. So through budget only the government will talk about what is their economic policy, how they are going to generate more employment, how are they going to address various socio-economic issues. Thus the budget reflects the values of that particular government because the budget determines who will be rewarded, recognized for what. Like some of them, every one of us, we expect when will our budget come, what benefits we get out of that particular budget. All of us, each and every citizen of that particular country, they expect some rewards from that particular budget. So budget clearly talks about the policies of the particular government. For example, the budget decides who receives certain services, where they will be placed, how they will be used. And budget also generates employment. Maybe when some budget, the government specifically talk about certain policy matters with regard to generating employment. So then they want to create a job. So they may allocate more funds to create more employment opportunities, both public and private sectors. They may have, they spell out the certain policies to bring more employment. So specifically, when they talk about the employment, immediately each and every citizen of that particular country, immediately they want to know whether do they get an employment, in which sector the government is planning to create an employment, are they having enough skill to get an employment opportunity, it will come to their mind. So these are the budgets, basically it's a political decisions and it reflects the decision of the particular government. When they talk about the political decision, certainly it affects men, women and different categories of the people in that particular country. Thus the budget is the reflection of the particular government's policies. Let us learn about what are the existing assumptions about budget as well as gender budgeting. Why do we need to talk about the gender budgeting? Why are we giving that much importance to the gender budgeting? The existing assumptions are made in the budget, such as the breadwinner or head of the family. So when we talk about the breadwinner and head of the family, what comes to our mind is that immediately we think that male is the head of the family, he is the main breadwinner. But that is not the true. There are women-headed families. Maybe there are various family means it is a unit. In that particular unit, social institutions, it not necessarily that male members has to head the family and not necessarily that the male member are the breadwinners. But the existing assumption clearly, due to the existing patriarchy, we assume that breadwinner or head of the family means immediately the male member comes to our mind. That is the first assumptions. So if we talk about the breadwinner and head of the family, that person may receive subsidies or credits for the household. He or she is assumed to head. For example, if the particular government or the society assumes that male member is the head of the family, so all government subsidies and credits, where it goes? It directly, it goes to the male account. So female may not get benefit. When those assumptions are made without recognizing the different situation of men and women, what happens is that it will create a differential impacts. Inevitably the result comes. For example, then if there is, we assume that male is the head of the family, they are the breadwinner. What happens is that these assumptions, it doesn't recognize the existing differences between male and female, the existing roles performed by the male and female in the society, that we don't recognize. If we don't recognize, it will create a differential impacts on male and female. The result is that the certain percentage of the female ended up in not having the benefits based on the existing budget. The budget must support the work of the women and men do throughout the economy. That is the first thing we have to do that. So, budget first recognize the existing differences between male and female. Budget must recognize the existing differential roles played by the male and female. Then only the budget will support the work of the women and men they do throughout the economy. If the budget supports only men's work in the formal sector, then the rest of the essential but hidden work does not get support. That is inefficient. So, it is essential to have a gender perspective in the budget, because we also know that men and women have a different capabilities and they play different roles in the society. Due to the existing differences and patriarchy, women maybe occupy large percentage in the certain sectors, male members may occupy large percentage in the certain sectors. For example, if we, as far as we all know that when we talk about the economy, it is bipartite, that is a formal and informal economy. The existing data clearly shows that the large percentage of the women are part of the informal economy. What is the reason for the large percentage of the women occupying in the informal economy? Means first is that lack of education. Second one is that lack of required skill to occupy the formal economy. Third one is that due to various roles they perform at the private spaces, sometimes the female may not be able to be part of the formal economy. Thus, the large percentage of women are part of the informal economy. If the particular budget is not talking about the informal economy and the women in the informal economy as well as their social security measures, the budget ended up only addressing the needs of the male members in the society, and they may not address the needs of the female members in the society. Men and women have traditionally not had the same access to health and education. There are gaps. These gaps we could able to know from the existing data. For example, the MMR, maternal mortality rate, child mortality rate, the existing sex ratio, these clearly points out the lack of enough health access to female members in the society. When it comes to education, like gross enrollment ratio, net enrollment ratio, and GER at the primary level, the gross enrollment ratio at the upper primary level, the gross enrollment ratio at the higher educational level clearly talks about the lack of access to education for female child in the society, specifically when we talk about the developing countries. Thus, there are gaps that we need to accept that. How do we address these gaps? Budget is the one of the significant instrument through that we could able to address the existing gaps in the various sectors. Thus, it is important to address those gaps using the budget. It is also essential to have a gender perspective in the budget, because men and women have different needs as they play different roles. That I have already spoke about how they are playing different roles. It is important to see whether their different needs are being addressed equitably in the budget. That is very important. Budget may appear gender neutral. When we talk about the budget, immediately what comes to our mind is that it is gender neutral, because they are not framed in terms of men and women. Basically, budget talks about the like how much allocations made by the government for the particular sector. So, thus when we see the budget, it appears to be gender neutral, and they don't explicitly state that men will receive certain benefits and women will receive certain benefits. They ostensibly deal with everybody equally. That is called the gender blindness. What happened is that if the budget is prepared in a gender blind way, they ended up in giving benefits only the certain percentage of the population. They may ended up neglecting a large percentage of the women and other marginalized community. Thus, gender blindness occurs when it is assumed that people of both genders have the exact needs and they are being addressed in the same way. But that is not true. Like when we talk about the male and female and girl children and boys, what happened is that due to the existing socialization and patriarchy, the society expects the female to perform certain activities in the as well as the society expects male to perform certain activities, and they play different roles in the society. Based on their roles, their needs also differs. If the budget doesn't address the needs of the male and female, and if they don't recognize the male and female and what are the roles they are playing in the society, the budget ended up in addressing in a very gender blind manner. So, gender blindness occurs when it is assumed that people of both genders have the exact needs, but that is not true, and they are being addressed in the same way. A gender perspective in the budget is necessary because there is much evidence now that poverty has a gender dimension, access to health is a gender dimension, access to education has a gender dimension. So, if we talk about each sector and if we talk about each issues, each one has a gender dimensions that we need to accept that, and we need to recognize those gender differences. Men and women fall into poverty for different reasons and also for similar reasons. Once they are in poverty, men and women respond differently to their situation of poverty. For example, I am giving two examples from an African country. Those examples certainly will help our learners to understand better, and they will come to know the importance of preparing gender budgeting. For example, in Uganda, one prevalent reason why women fall into poverty is widowhood. When they lose their spouses, their status and income suddenly drop, but this does not happen to men. No man ever says that he became a poor because his wife died. Nobody will say in any society, even Asian society or African society, even America, wherever, whichever society it is, nobody will say that my wife has died, that's why I became poor. Moreover, the reason is that in a Ugandan society is patriarchal, and property, particularly the land and animals, which are the possessions of people with low income, is owned by men and passed on to their sons. Women only gain access to land through their spouses. They gain access to the use of cows through their husbands and brothers. So, when a woman loses her husband, the property goes away to the son, and sometimes if it is in a polygamous marriage, you all know that in many of the African society, polygamous is very much prevalent. Thus, if it's in a polygamous marriage in Uganda society, and the son is from another wife, women, they lose access to property and access to land when they become widows. However, for men, it is not so. At the same time, there is also evidence in Uganda that when poor people get poorer and poorer, the response from men is that they feel that their gender identity has been stripped away from them. Their gender identity is to be a provider. So, there is a strong feeling that male members means they are the breadwinner, they are supposed to take care of the entire family, and they go out, they have to work and they bring necessary resources to take care of the entire family. That gender identity, not only in a Asian context, in Africa also, that gender identity is very much prevalent among male members as well as in the society. Men believe that their role in the family is to put food on the table, bring in money and pay for the food in the family, and when they cannot provide it, they feel that they have lost their manhood. Their response is to try to escape through alcohol or by abandoning the family. So that very much we could able to relate these cases with Indian context also. Here also alcoholism is very much prevalent among male members in the society. Specifically in rural areas, now you could be able to see that most of the male members, they are very much taking alcohol. That affects the female members in the society. Those female, they are facing gender-based violence due to the alcohol consumption of male members in the family and in the society. On the other hand, women respond differently. When poverty hits them hard, they try to keep the children together. They also sometimes resort to doing any work that will bring in something to allow them to care for children, or even some of the African society, just to take care of the children and other family members, even women, they get into prostitutions to take care of the entire family. So there is a clear gender differences. When the poverty affects the male, they respond differently. At the same time, when the women, if the poverty hits women, they respond differently, and they try to analyze the existing situations and they are ready to take up any kind of work. That's the main reason that even if you collect the data in Asia and in Africa and other Europe and other America also, in some of the developing countries, the percentage of women in the informal sector is high due to the poverty and other reasons. Even when the economic collapses, or when the economy is not able to provide or not able to generate enough employment, most of the women, they are ready to do any kinds of work to take care of the entire family. In summary, if policies and budget must address poverty, that we must agree that it must be understood that poverty has a gender dimension. That second thing, we must agree that. Therefore, the budget must look at poor men and poor women as a different in their roles and needs, as having a different causes of and responses to poverty. It is important to have a gender perspective to address poverty effectively. That is very important. There are also other reasons for having a gender perspective in the budget. That is first is to foster the economic efficiency and honor government's commitments to achieve equality. When we talk about the foster economic efficiency, most of the time what happens is that the women, most of the time they are doing certain kinds of activities, even certain kinds of economic activities. For example, women were largely part of the 60% of the agricultural activities are carried out by the female members, as well as the large percentage of the women are part of the informal sector, and the activities carried out by the women are not counted as an economic activities and it is not recognized. Thus, it is not counted as part of the GDP. So, when we talk about foster the economic efficiency, it is important for the government to skill the female in the society, as well as they must be educated and they have to be skilled to be part of the macroeconomic activities. If the large part of the female became part of the macroeconomic activities, certainly that will improve the economic efficiency of the government. It will increase the GDP of the particular country. If we accept that Men and women are unequal in their capabilities, as well as there is an unequal opportunities available in the society. And if we know that the budget is that instrument, budget is a very significant instrument that drives economic and social policy and implements them, then we should use the budget to bridge that inequality in order to fulfill the agreements that our governments make to achieve equality. I could able to give more evidences to support my argument. There is much evidence that if a budget is used to reduce gender inequalities, the efficiency of the economic plan increases. That is the first thing. I have given an example that how the economic efficiency plan could be increased if the women are part of the macroeconomic activities. For example, it has been found through research on Kenyan women farmers. If given the same agricultural inputs for men and women, and if they have a same education level, women have a higher agricultural leads of more than 20% than men. Here we could able to understand that how much the women they could able to increase the yields when they have given same inputs like a male members in the society. I have given more evidences also. There are many similar studies in other parts of the world. Time use surveys, you must have heard about that. Later I will explain what is time use surveys also. Time use surveys and research on how women use the time provide evidence that when women's domestic burdens such as fetching water and firework, looking after children, cooking and cleaning are reduced through the effects of public policy such as the provision of water or energy efficient stoves. Household income certainly increases because the women have more time to look for paid work and bring more money to their home. Also more children, if the women could able to bring more money to the home, then they could, then more children they can go to school because daughters are usually kept at home to help their mothers with domestic work. Studies have shown a strong linkage between reducing time burden on women and school attendance by girl children. There is also evidence that when mothers have incomes and more significant part of that income goes to the welfare of the children such as health, nutrition and education. So, if the government has made children's primary education as a policy priority, then that policy can be more efficient if it is also helps women to earn an income because they will buy school uniforms and books will feed their children better. The children will go to school and study better certainly if their mother have a more income. These are some of the examples what I have given certainly makes us to understand how economic efficiency is increased by interventions that address men and women in their particular roles and by reducing gender inequalities. Policies and budget should also take into consideration the hidden economy. For example, many countries around the world, both developed and poor countries, are restructuring health services to achieve what they call a greater efficiency. Here I need to explain bit more about what is health services, how to, why many countries they are restructuring the existing health services and why do they call us greater efficiency. The efficiency indicators they use are reduction in cost per patient treated. They try to make sure that they are reducing the cost for every patient treated. To achieve this, there is a policy in Africa that we call home-based care. Home-based care is a policy aimed at discharging patients as soon as possible from the hospital and encouraging families to care for their patient at home. What happened is that this we call it as an economic efficiency, but in truth, this is not economically efficient. This is a transfer of cost because the cost of patient care has been transferred from the hospital, from the public service and passed on to the family, in other words to the women in the household. Like existing patriarchy clearly expects the women to take care of the entire household, not only the children, elders and like every members in the household. So, in the long run, if they in the name of cost efficiency, economic efficiency and to reduce the hospitalization cost if they transfer the patient from the hospital to the home after providing the certain services, then that will increase the burden for the women. If the more number of patients are at home, women may not be able to go out and work. So, in the long run, this may have implications even for the economy. If a woman is employed, she must leave for the job to stay home to provide the care. If she may lose her job because she is off work too often, this kind of analysis helps to make the policies more gender responsive. The economy must be seen as a broader economy, not just the formal economy. So, gender responsive budgeting is an idea that a gender approach or perspective is applied to the budget by using specific analytical tool to analyze the budget from a gender perspective. The budget should not be only element analyzed in this fashion. If gender responsive budgeting, we also go behind the budget and look at the policy captured in the budget. We look at the macroeconomy as well as sectoral policies from a gender perspective. We examine the budgets to determine their impact on men, women, girls and boys. Our interest of urban and rural men and women equitably are served by the budget and its underlying policies. In gender responsive budgeting, we highlight women's and men's different but definite contributions to the economy, including care economy. As my example shows, I have given two examples. We also expose the linkages and trade-offs between the household economy and the care economy and the market economy. We call for creative ways of recognizing, counting and rewarding women's unpaid work and equitable budget sharing. We emphasize creativity. We are not asking for a check to be given for the work they do in the household, but we would like to see public funds being used first of all to reduce the burden of care work so that women have the opportunity to go out, earn an income and also to contribute to the economy in that respect, but also to ensure that justice is done and that men and women are rewarded fairly for the work they put into entire economy. These are some of the references I have used to prepare this lecture. I hope you could be able to know the significance of preparing gender responsive budgeting, and we know that what are the existing assumptions. From this lecture, hope our learners have a clear perspectives on gender budgeting. Thank you so much for listening this lecture. Thank you.